Tee Lopes has a hostile immaturity problem that has spilled onto the global stage for years upon years, up until right now, in the year of our me, 2025. This cultural situation came to a head in the comments section of my recent smash hit music theory video, Why Sonic Mania Music is So Amazing. And it is. The fact that Sonic Mania's music is so incredible, it gives me an even further incentive and motivation to speak up about the baggage problems that come with the person behind the laptop, Mr. Lopes himself. And so this discussion will now be presented in the following 3 parts. In part 1 of this video, we are going to hone in specifically on Tee Lopes' backhanded remarks on my new video. He elected to leave a comment, and I responded to it in a way that caused quite a stir. And I will tell you right now that I intentionally was provocative to draw your attention, right? To make a big stink about it. And it's because I hold all the cards. If you guys remember when Brad Buxer's record label, Fervor Records, in the year 2020, right, long after Sonic 3 came out, Fervor Records reissued a printing of Hard Times, which was, of course, the composition that Ice Cap Zone was based on. And they very brazenly published this new reissue of the single with exact sprite artwork from Ice Cap. Now, on paper, Fervor Records did not have the rights to do that, but they were saying, we know we're in the right? We know that Sega owes us money, so we're going to kind of flout this in their face to say, haha, right? And Sega's not going to do anything about that. What are they going to do? Ask for reimbursement for the Ice Cap artwork? Well, if they did, they would just deduct that out of the money that they owe Brad Buxer, and right? So the point is, they brazenly took a stand and said, I triple dog dare you to make a stink about it. Because if you do, it's like, yeah, we can go there, right? And here we are today, here out in the snow. Now we're going to go there because Mr. Lopes could not help himself. And what he said, right, he worded things in a way that people in the audience looking along, if you looked at Tee Lopes' comment and you were like, whoa, that seemed like a great, awesome, congratulatory comment, I can totally understand why the backhanded slight in that statement went over your attention. I totally get that. And I similarly left a very blunt response that we will unpack today, okay? So part 1 of this video is actually going to be pretty quick because it's just about Tee Lopes' comment. Once you understand what was happening in Mr. Lopes' comment, well now, as you're going to see, Mr. Lopes' comment summoned history. Maybe you missed that, but I'm going to say that again. Tee Lopes' comment on my video unnecessarily, unforcedly conjured up all this history of unpleasantries. So, since Tee Lopes chose to do that, he could not help himself, we will then take a look at what that exactly is. In part 2 of this video, we will look at a long, pervasive pattern of Tee Lopes' hostile immaturity. And this pattern is so overwhelming, so shameful, still happening as of last fiscal quarter, that if you hear everything that is discussed today and you're still saying, Alex Yard, bad, I don't care. I think you should have left my viewing audience a good while ago. Glad that we could figure this out now, because if Tee Lopes' example that he is setting is something that you're going to sign off for, please, right? I do not answer to industry alliances and toxic positivity where everyone just has to put a big happy face on no matter what. I'm here doing my thing. And so with all of that established, in part 3 of this video, I will be delivering Tee Lopes apologists their sentencing, which will specify what they need to do in order to remain in Mr. Lopes' camp. And if they refuse their sentence, then they will earn my disapproval. Right? Every time I sentence someone, guys, you guys get all scared and you think it's just confrontational thing, right? All that is happening is I'm confidently explaining my position, and if you're bothered by that, right, then that just means I'm onto something real. That you would resort to telling me to get a life? You can't bring yourself to actually discuss the ideas at hand because you know it's a losing argument. Everything that I'm doing here, I've never said anything to Tee Lopes, the person, in my entire life. He has lost, long ago, the privilege of asynchronous communication with me. He lost that privilege a good while ago. I will only ever respond to something Tee Lopes says publicly, which is what he did this week. He commented on my video. He freely elected to come to my platform and say something, so sure, he made the choice to step onto my stage. I'm happy to respond in plain view of my entire audience. And the reason why I have acted so provocatively, all I'm doing is intentionally triggering your ire and your displeasure to expose a double standard. Anything that you've seen me do this past week that you disapprove of, I am just mirroring the way that Mr. Lopes conducts himself, doubles down throughout the years. I see all your backlash. I think it's worthless backlash because it will mean nothing until you start holding Mr. Lopes to that same standard. So let's jump right into this, guys, with part one of this discussion, Tee Lopes' backhanded remarks. And here it is. Okay, so by now, everyone has seen the smash hit, treasured cultural touchstone event, the Sonic Mania video. Why Sonic Mania's music is so amazing. And it is. I gotta be clear about this. Sonic Mania's soundtrack is absolutely tremendous. I want to make it clear that his music is amazing, and I will always give objective, fair credit and praise for Mr. Lopes' music. I shouldn't have to ever talk about Tee Lopes the person, but because he continues to have this part of himself shine through in social media discussions ad nauseum because he doesn't have the right people in his life to keep his ego in check, well, understand that I can separate art from the artist. No one is ever going to take away my ability to vibe with Studiopolis Act 2. Running through that level, that's mine. That does not belong to Tee Lopes. He can never take it away from me. That experience is mine forever. So, okay. Mr. Lopes says, a friend sent me this video, and I thought it was great content. Educational, thoroughly researched, and well put together. Even I learned a few things. What can we say about everything so far? Well, it's a sort of a reverse Turing test situation, where this might as well have been just a generic prompt churned out by an AI. It doesn't say anything specifically about my video. Sentiments like these are the sort of things that I get in my email inbox twice a day, because on YouTube, once you get 20,000 subscribers or more, you start to get all these spammy little phishing things, emails with people saying, hey, I have this advertising opportunity for you, and I really like your content. I can tell you're really passionate and you do a lot of good research, right? So this is a generic sentiment that could apply to any video ever, which is not a problem, but that brings us to the final point, the final piece of this. Everything up until now gives the appearance that, oh yeah, I was just going throughout my day, my friend mentioned this video to me, and here we are, right? But then suddenly, in a big swooping twist at the end, now we're not just here today in the present celebrating the now. No. T cannot help himself. This is his Christoph Waltz handshake moment, people. He cannot resist saying, here's to more positive stuff like this. Oh no. Right? So, first of all, is my Sonic Mania video positive? Yes and no. I would say it's mostly positive, absolutely. But there is very deliberate and overt roasting of Tee Lopes. Just in case anyone is not clear on that, I did it in a way that was kind of tongue-in-cheek, speaking kind of metaphorically at times, and I did that so that it was all subtext. Unlike Mr. Lopes, I will never make a scene and make it awkward for people with kind of room-clearing hostility. I will instead make it subtle, right? I would think that half the roast that I included in this Mania video would totally go over the heads of maybe most viewers. I gave T that opportunity to keep it simple, subtle, subtext, deep lore, Easter eggs for the but it's not this big, right? Unlike Mr. Lopes, I do not take to my social media platform and just do a bridge-burning rant because things don't go my way. I instead tried to make it subtle and satirical. So for Tee Lopes to say, here's to more positive stuff like this, Alex, well, it's like, which video did you watch? I made this video and gave you constructive criticism that you very rightly deserved in said video. So for you to then turn around, right? In this comment, he's trying to put a happy face on this. And he almost did. If he omitted that last sentiment, then there wouldn't have been, right? But he went there. So I poke fun at him for including the Sonic 4 melody, the anchor riff, in the first level of what is supposed to be the breakaway game. Find your audience, and it's an iconic, nightmarish Sonic 4 anchor melody. A Faker Sonic fan? I don't know, but I'm sure gonna have fun lampooning that and say, how did we get here? Again, that's all very insignificant, kind of just in good fun. I don't actually think T is necessarily a Faker Sonic fan, because after all, he put the McDonald's jingle from Balloon Park into Studiopolis even. He's so backhanded that even when talking about music theory, he cannot resist dumping on it, invoking his now obsolete stereotypical negative perception of what music theory is to say, music theory is not as hard or as boring as I thought it would be. And it's like, you're an illiterate bully. If you don't understand what the magic of music theory is, and that learning music theory is like going to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, to be able to see through the matrix code of how music works and then summon up all these amazing creations with your knowledge of how that quote-unquote matrix code works, as you're going to see, I'm going to be touching back on that illiterate bully aspect a little later, but right from the mouth of Babes himself. He can only accept music theory reluctantly and with a backhanded swipe, right? He is bringing his outdated, learning is bad. I don't want to have to do all this memorization and book learning, right? If that's what your perception of music theory was, I'm just out here saying music theory is absolute electric magic, and Tee Lopes' even reluctance to get around to it, right? Oh, music theory should be so lucky to have Tee Lopes give it a stab. It's part of a larger issue that we're going to touch upon. I don't understand how he could then, 2 years later, after using the circle of fifths and Penny's big breakaway in the ways that he'd never done before, days later, don't be encouraged by the fact that I don't know music theory. But you got a 15 out of 15 on the music theory webinar, right? Tee Lopes is on a different planet. He jumps from here to here, and things don't add up. Things don't make sense. He contradicts himself. So as I'm reading his comment, and I'm like, okay, Tee Lopes, whether or not he picked up on the satirical grilling comeuppance, I would not put satire like that in a permanent piece of content unless I truly thought that the target of the satire was just an absolute lost cause, right? Doubling and tripling down, growing more hostile and immature throughout the years. I will always attempt to, work things out with a person. But as I said, Tee Lopes has lost any and all privileges to, private communication with me. It is almost impossible to talk to him with any honesty or constructive approach without it seeming condescending and patronizing, because he is stuck in a middle school bubble, and there's no way I can deliver that to him without him getting even more ticked off about it. All of this is to say that everything in this comment, though sterile and generic, would have been totally fine. I was ready to say, all right, Tee's stepping up to be a man for a change, putting a positive face on this, right? But then, okay, so what is Tee talking about? What Tee is alluding to here, which probably went over the heads of most other people in the comments, certainly the ones that objected and, unsubscribed and whatnot. What Tee is alluding to here is that he is aware of my past content, right? Because the start of this comment sort of seems like I found this today. But then at the end, no. Now what is he doing? Saying, oh yeah, what you did here today, Alex, is positive. Yeah, I want to see more of this, right? So here I am roasting and satirizing someone who I already constructively criticized 2-3 years ago, who's only gotten worse. And now I'm raising the stakes by lampooning him in the Ultimate Sonic Mania music theory video of my channel. And now he's going to turn around and give me a positivity report card. Holy smokes, Batman. You totally missed the point of all of this. If you think now you're going to respond to this, attempt to put a happy face on it and say, I'm glad to see some positivity from you, Alex. That's what I want to see from you in the future. We're going to get to toxic positivity. Most of you don't know what Mr. Lopes is alluding to in this final sentence. Here's to more positive stuff like this. Now we're going to go there. Now we are going to touch upon the negative stuff that Tee is alluding to here. So in part 2 of this video, we are first going to look at the example of Tee Lopes bullying people who don't agree with he. And I use the capital he kind of as a goof to kind of indirectly touch upon a lot of people in the Sonic community regard Tee Lopes as a god. That's literally a phrase, and of course they're being figurative, but that is the status where people will regard Tee Lopes the person as a god, right? But really all of that is driven by his music, right? And it becomes a problem when people start to extend this blanket extended, oh, he's a god, and they start accepting some of the more poisonous things that he brings to the table because, all right, it's Tee. We're going to touch upon that illiterate bully concept as kind of the first example of where things kicked into gear. We will next look at his aggressive defiance of constructive criticism. A lot of what I'm going to say today is already reflected on Twitter. So since that didn't work, I am amplifying it again today. And finally, in the last case study of here in part 2, we're going to look at Mr. Lopes' underdeveloped conflict resolution methods. At this point, I'm ready to say, Tee Lopes, I want to see your middle school diploma. I am not convinced that you have one, because the way that you navigate your professional career and your public-facing self that you broadcast, you resemble that of a 7th grade bully. And it's very clear-cut. I am not here to continue harassing you and keep heckling you to try, right? I never do that. I don't talk to Tee Lopes. I see what he's doing in the public, and all I am ever doing is telling my audience not to be like Tee Lopes. If that is eventually able to affect change in Mr. Lopes, great. But like I said, could be a lost cause. That doesn't stop me or anyone else from observing what they've noticed and drawing a line in the sand. So here we go. Now, if you think about Sonic 3's second level and how it's pronounced, right? That's the most tired discussion in the world. But it is necessary to go there and talk about that sewer in the second level of Sonic 3. The way that this got started was actually not necessarily anything Tee Lopes the person said, but it was 2022 when my Patreon and Discord community was just getting started, and it was a day like any other. We were hanging out on a Discord call, and when the topic of Sonic 3's second level came up, a person who was there at that call, who is, by and large, a pretty solid dude, and right, this is even someone who I consider to be an upstanding guy, he just flat out says, it's pronounced Hydro City, and that's the last word on it. I'm just like, hold on, what is, right? This is my Discord server, and here someone is making a room-clearing outburst because he wants other people to pronounce it right. I'm going to try is not to get into the weeds of that age-old debate. The Game Apologist's great video on the pronunciation debate covers most of what we could even say about that topic with Tennessee. So just to be clear, if you pronounce the second level of Sonic 3 as Hydro City, and someone asks you for your opinion on the two different pronunciations, there is one correct answer. There is only one correct answer as to how you approach that cultural meme. You ready? The only correct answer is to say, well, some people pronounce it hydrosity, and I can see how they got there, because if you look at the level ice cap, they put the words together, but they keep the capital C. And so in Hydro City, hydrosity, they put those words together, but they don't capitalize the C, so it's meant to be one word. I can see why people pronounce it that way, and why they would continue doing it, and I'm going to continue pronouncing it Hydro City. That's kind of a cool, fun, the dress is blue, the dress is silver, right? It's a classical Rorschach test. It's just a quirky, okay? That is the only proper response to that question. Now, for people to turn around and say, oh, when the Hydro City lobby telling people that they're stupid for pronouncing it hydrosity, making t-shirts, profiting with merchandise on this, a lot of people will use the Donald Trump cop-out of saying, oh, he's just kidding. Yeah, that's not going to fly. Because you are expressing your little tantrum about this, that you want the rest of the world to play along with your razz. And what you are doing is indistinguishable from being toxic, because half the time you're not even really saying anything funny. You're just trying to peer pressure people into seeing it your way. Okay? So when I had that incident in the Discord call, I'm like, it's one thing if just some random Discord user would go nuclear like that and make things awkward, but, right, he's looking up to his role models. He's seeing Tee Lopes do these things, and that becomes normal and acceptable. He's setting a precedent that, right, Tee Lopes has millions of fans, including his many Twitter followers who stick around and eat up everything he say. That's normalizing it. So why don't I respond? Why don't I, again, not talking to Tee Lopes because he might be a lost cause, speak to my audience? So I did my classic keynote address, which was titled, We Need to Talk About How You Talk About Hydrosity. And I put the cards on the table, I explained everything, and how Tee Lopes, half the time, what Tee Lopes says is not even funny. So there's even less of a basis to say he's just joking. No, it's indistinguishable from actual bullying. And furthermore, even if I give you the benefit of the doubt and play along that T is joking with that, well, the issue with that is that even if he was, millions of people are taking it seriously. He is giving them red meat to feast on when he does this. And it's irresponsible, or at least a cop-out, to say, oh no, I'm just kidding. The fact is, when Adult Swim did their 9 Rings of Hell, and they put Sonic fans at the bottom, perhaps very deservedly, right? Hydro City is like one of the worst historical examples of how the Sonic community can cut at each other's throats with all these unforced bickering incidents. So, what happened next in a surprise twist, okay? As I did this keynote address on a live stream, we're talking about Hydro City from any number of different angles, and then someone in the chat says, Tee Lopes just tweeted about Hydro City, right? During my keynote address live stream, he sent out another tweet about Hydro City meme, and it included the line, "This is a joke, as if to say, obviously this is a joke. So that very brazenly seemed to be a reactive sort of damage control, and a cowardly one at that he would talk past me by reacting to my live stream while it was happening and say this is obvious, right? If you're saying this is obviously a joke, then the problem that I am highlighting that seems to be lost on you, that you're setting the Sonic community back. If you're saying this is obviously a joke, that's basically a straw man. So the wild thing is that Tee Lopes would later claim that he didn't know who I was, that he had never heard of me, okay? So you guys see what's happening here? It's bad for T in both cases. Whether or not his tweet during my keynote on that exact topic, even if it was a coincidence, if it was actually a reaction, that meant that it was on his radar and he was like, oh, let me do damage control literally now, okay? But if we are taking Mr. Lopes at his word, if he had never heard of me until much later, you guys realize what that exposes? It means that T's ruminations, his being consumed by this childish, petty, arbitrary topic of pronunciation in a Sega Genesis game, is so all-consuming to his soul that he was literally doing it at the exact moment I was condemning it. It's like on The Simpsons, Homer is pleading with Marge and saying, no, seriously, I can go on a diet, I can be good about this. And she goes, no, you're eating a huge sausage right now. And it cuts to him and he's munching down on a big sausage. He is literally up to this shit as I am condemning it, right? So whether or not Tee Lopes is being dishonest, that keynote, which was calling out his unfortunate behavior directly, either way, Tee Lopes ends up with egg on his face. So since I regard T as probably a lost cause, I was speaking to my audience primarily, and I would never have expected him back in 2022 to rise above his cowardice and acknowledge it in any substantive way, right? Well, I sat back and I thought, well, even if he wouldn't acknowledge it, let's see if he gets the message. Let's see if the toxicity that I condemned that day and debunked the cop-out excuses that surround it and only further set back the immaturity and toxicity of our community, let's see if he gets the message. Let's see if these incidents with Hydro City or anything else with this petty hostility continues to happen. Well, dude could not wait even just a few months. Later that year, he made his t-shirt, right? So he's tripling down with his illiterate bully logic, and I hate to say this, hydro means water, city means city. You're an illiterate, counterproductive bully. And the reason why I'm not going to debunk the kindergarten logic in the t-shirt that he sold, profited on, right? And you remember that tweet in the Sonic Mania video? The fires shall be forever fanned. You can find that Mudkip user's tweet. That was a tweet that will now live immortalized forever in that video as a deterrent to Mr. Lopes' childishness and ego problem. The fires shall be forever fanned, right? Here we are, Sonic fans, in the lowest circle of hell on Adult Swim's bad fandom list, and Tee Lopes is saying, let's go even deeper into the trenches of just eternal bickering. So I'm not going to debunk the logic in his foolish t-shirt, because if you go find that post, this is going to be a recurring theme today, you will see my perspective reflected in the replies. Not that I tweeted at it, but other people understand his fallacious logic, and so I don't need to spend any breath talking about it. So once Tee Lopes made his bed, selling those shirts, shame on you, Mr. Lopes, for using your prominent position in the Sonic community. Now you are even bringing in official Sonic artwork so that all the people who grew up with Sonic or were brought into the universe through Mania and they loved your music so much and they were so thankful for your very creative, mind-blowing soundtrack, Sonic Mania. And now they're going to hear that voice that they attribute so much weight and admiration to, just a big F you. You pronounce it wrong because you're not smart enough. Let me tell you why you're not smart, because this is why you're pronounced right. So Tee Lopes earned himself pretty much a sentence in that instance of 5 years of irrelevance. It would take him at least 5 years to rehabilitate his bullcrap, and that 5-year timer would only start once he acknowledges the extent of the problem. Much like Will Smith will take 10 years to rehabilitate his horseradish, again, that clock will only start once he acknowledges the problem, which he pretty much hasn't. If Tee's a lost cause, I'm speaking to the next generation of homies as a deterrent. And it was probably about that time that I unfollowed Tee on Twitter. And it wasn't only because of the hydro issue. It was also because he's just a poisonous fountain. And maybe he's found his audience. Maybe a great many people. We all know the algorithm and online discourse feeds on negativity, and he's found his audience, right? When Tee Lopes does these vicious dunks on whoever, he's going to get a whole lot of likes. So that becomes kind of a cycle that feeds itself. I had to tap out of Mr. Lopes' Twitter account because it was things like that, and also he's such an insecure ruminator. He will walk around his house stewing and metaphorically pounding his fists on the table, upset that the world is not aligning with his desires, and then he will pass that stress on to you. He will write a really resentful, awkward tweet that's sort of putting someone on blast, whether it mentions their name or not. It's just like, all right, what can I do to help? Because what you're saying is just accomplishing nothing, maybe only further exacerbating the problem. So, like, if I'm going to use social media, I'm not going to subject myself to anything that might come out of his mouth, because half the time it's just an awful vibe. You want to talk about a positivity report card like this is Tee Lopes' kindergarten classroom. So I tapped out. So if Tee Lopes was being dishonest during my keynote address on the topic, if he's trying to say that that's a coincidence, it's just a question. Was Tee Lopes even aware of Alex Yard? Because he's too much of a coward to weigh in on that earnestly, but what he will do is use the situation in order to benefit himself upon the release of Penny's Big Breakaway. So, what happened? Well, 2 years later, Tee Lopes has any number of opportunities to reach out to me and say what's on his mind, if he disagrees, whatever. But what does he do? Well, out of the blue, absolute nowhere, 2 years later, dude digs up an unlisted video of mine, which was a video that was of a time and place that was a conflict that I had with the Geek Critique, where the Geek Critique, Josh, that YouTube channel, did more than one highly inappropriate, unreasonable things to me. And so I took to the stage to put transparency on it, because, like, what the Geek Critique did to me is not something that you guys will ever do. So let's clear this up right now, since there seems to be a massive disconnect on immunity from constructive criticism. That was basically what happened with the Geek Critique. He could not stand the fact that I had constructively criticized his takes about a Sonic and video game related topic, that he said, don't ever respond to anything I say. He wanted like a total ban, okay? And so in that same video, I believe I mentioned Mr. Lopes simply because the Geek Critique and Tee Lopes are kind of stemming from the same underlying immaturity issue, and just thinking that the world revolves around them. And their approach to the Hydro City topic is literally a perfect emblematic example of it. So Tee Lopes, 2 years after the fact, digs up this quasi-drama video, and it's like, okay, where have you been for the last 2 years? Whatever. But so not only is he reaching out, but he is leaving a comment, a very cowardly comment. Cowardly because he's just going to use his typical kind of passive-aggressive, talk past you sort of snarky little moment. He is too much of a coward to respond to anything that's been said about him, but instead he will call my attention. Literally, the comment that he left was, he said, right, this was back when I was at the Alex Yard Zone newsroom, the Stephen Colbert style desk. So he comments on it, and what he says is nothing to do with the contents of the video. He just snarkily hones in on one thing. He says, you know, when you're sitting at this desk, the way the green screen is set up, you look way too big in relation to the desk itself. It's like you're really crunched in there. And that was it. So here I had done this entire very important conversation to establish where things stand and make sure any other content creators like Tee Lopes or the Geek Critique or whoever else would never be entitled to conduct themselves that way in the future and place all these unfounded expectations on me, right? So Tee Lopes digs up that specific video and just leaves a sassy little comment, just harping on one little detail. So that was Tee's way of saying, Alex, I see what you were up to with this video, and now I'm just going to leave a pointless, sassy little, just middle school, teenage girl, totally counterproductive, burning the bridge even further. And so I told him flat out, it would seem that you're too much of a coward to say what's actually on your mind. And he wouldn't. If Tee Lopes chooses to show you that exchange, obviously he's more than able to do that. I'm not going to show it to you because it also involves digging into the precedent, right? He tries to have a gotcha moment, calling me a hypocrite for even responding, right? He's on a different planet. He jumps from here to here. The one thing that you kind of can't get from Tee Lopes is a direct answer. He will do anything but that. He will try to be sassy and intimidate you by talking past you, being snarky, right? Not an ounce of constructive criticism. He doesn't know how to, he's never been taught how to do that. So after he sent me a third message, you know, the reply section, I was like, all right, well, obviously this is going nowhere. So Tee Lopes waited 2 years to get his big moment where I guess this was going to be his revenge. Now, what happened? 2-3 days later, Penny's big breakaway shadow drops. And I'm like, damn, right? It hit me. I'm like, Tee Lopes is spending this week getting ready to launch one of the most important games of his creative career, the most important sound, right? Penny's big breakaway. We're breaking away from Sega. We're doing our own thing. You want to talk about festering, ruminating on negativity? Bro was using the week to launch his game to be sassy and petty with me. To finally show some stones and at least show his face, he initiated the contact. I never contacted Tee. He chose to dig up that unlisted quasi-drama video, and it turned out to be, we didn't know when Penny was going to drop, and then suddenly it was, gotcha. He was trying to instigate me so that I would do more reporting and condemning because it would have promoted his game. And so after the game came out and I realized this, that he was trying to instigate me, use me as a tool, that he would wait 2 years and then all of a sudden drop a snarky comment mere days before the video game came out, The Breakaway. And so once that clicked in my head, I'm like, well, let me go look at his Twitter account. I get my hazmat suit on, I take a deep breath, and I open his Twitter feed. And after not scrolling for all that long, I saw that he posted an old clip of me at the Colbert desk. And pretty much he was saying, all he wrote in the text was something like, bro, I've never even heard of you. Okay, so mere days before Penny comes out, you're going to try to put me on blast on your Twitter account and calling my attention on an unlisted drama video, right? Caught you, T, when you baited me, when you attempted to use the internet as a tool for your own ends to rile up someone's frustration and emotions so that it would promote more awareness of the game that you were trying to sell, the game that you wanted everybody to hear your soundtrack. Well, it didn't work. You're small, and you're my bitch. Tee Lopes, you are my bitch because I said something about you. It got under your skin and you showed your face to try to get some kind of petty revenge in order to promote your game. You freely elected to do that on my platform. Tee Lopes, you are my bitch because you came to me like a lapdog to try to have your sassy moment. And I basically saw right through it. Didn't work, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't need to tell anyone about this. I didn't tell anyone for months and months. This was about a year ago when Penny's Breakaway launched. I didn't tell anyone about it. That was my happy little secret that Tee ran up to me like a lapdog, tried to instigate me, was dismissed for the childish coward that he is, who refused to say what was on his mind and or to put me on blast on his own Twitter account. Now, the idea that Mr. Lopes would put a clip of me on his feed to all his followers a year ago and would further amplify what's going on in the Alex Yard Zone just this week. So I haven't looked at it. I have not looked at Tee's Twitter feed since this went down. I'm not really reading replies on Twitter because it's sort of pointless at this point. It's just a sea of people saying, get a life, get off the internet. There's no point in engaging with that, never mind reading it. I know a lot of people out there think that if something gets 70 hearts, that I should take the message and back down. I'm not in it for the likes. And if you're equating truth with who has more followers that can summon their army to click a heart-shaped button, it's no wonder you're experiencing a lingering disconnect in understanding about what's happening here. I will say that I did those segments at the news desk with the Bravo board and the unnoticed board on either side. I was being intentionally provocative. I was like, this news desk is so absurdly batshit insane in its presentation, albeit with a very constructive criticism. I'm operating in the tradition of Stephen Colbert on Comedy Central, not the CBS night show. I'm talking about Stephen Colbert. He would do these over-the-top segments shining a light on all this horseradish, and it was so ridiculous that Tee Lopes, in that way, he kind of took the bait. He showed it to all of his audience members, and, however many of them dunked on me that day, it's just brand awareness. I say provocative things in order to stimulate a reaction, and if that causes indirect controversy on Twitter, that's putting the name Alex Yard in the consciousness of people for better or worse that day. But I am so confident in the value of my perspective and my commentary that I'm willing to do these provocative things so that people can come in and see what's actually going on. Since Tee Lopes' promotional stunt didn't work, Penny's big breakaway didn't sell much. So, Tee's cowardly resentment of my commentary or whatever else stems from his insecurity, right? It's an open secret that Mr. Lopes has an ego problem. I'm not the first person to say that's common sentiment expressed by viewers at my live streams way before any of this went down. Certainly by the time Penny's Big Breakaway came out, Mr. Lopes' ego problems and insecurities, the way that they manifest is by Tee Lopes will overtly acknowledge that he is allergic to constructive criticism. However, he was raised he thinks that constructive criticism is a problem. So let's jump into a very specific case study of that, people. Many of you remember this after the Sonic Superstars animation was first premiered on YouTube, in the words of Tee Lopes, with his classic, just petty, toxic sarcasm. Fandoms. Thanks for this awesome thing, brand. Allow me to waste my precious time dissecting until I can find every single flaw and then put it on blast as loud as possible. Y'all do you. My time is better spent creating than criticizing, and that's all I'm saying about this subject. Proceeds to say a lot more, right? So he's just a clown who, he says that he's going to do something. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that he's going to do it. Soon after, he opens his mouth more, albeit in response to very fair replies that he got from, for example, Azon talking to Tee. Well, here's the thing. Although I do think the way the discussion's going is perhaps disrespectful, it's also generally fine to be dissatisfied with something and find exactly why you don't like it. Criticism is very important, and it's not meant to mock or make fun of something. Now, what Azon just said should be full well known to anyone with a middle school diploma, but it's 2023 when the Sonic Superstars animation, and now one of many internet users shouldn't have to be in the spot of having to catch Tee Lopes up on how the economy works, that when you sell something for a price, and even if it's free, have you not seen the review section on Amazon? You say whether you liked it or not and why. That's what art is. It's about the fans processing it and responding to it, putting in, what does Tee say? Yeah, man, but going out of your way to find problems in something you didn't pay for? Have mercy. Too much free time. Now, this is again Tee Lopes on a different planet, sweeping, jumping from things to things. Tee Lopes is so profoundly basic that the way he views this as an opportunity cost. And say, like, when you live life on planet Earth, you should be creating, not criticizing. He sees that as a zero-sum opportunity cost. Only create, never criticize. Tee Lopes, I hate to be the one to expose that you've been in an infantile diaper bubble up until the early 2020s, but this is not remotely close to how the basics of online conversations work. And if you think you or the Sonic Superstars project that you worked on is for any reason exempt from any of that honest, constructive feedback, the only antidote is 2-3 times the amount of constructive criticism. Now, it's one thing for Mr. Lopes to have just a bogus dog crap take, but it's even more ridiculous when he's just getting the facts wrong. Having a difference of opinion is one thing, but when you are building your soapbox preaches on non-factual information and saying, oh, you're going out of your way to fight problems in something you didn't pay for. Well, sugar, Sonic Superstars was always scheduled to cost $60, and if there was an animation in Sonic Origins, and then now we'll get to Sonic Superstars, gonna be $60, there is even more reason to voice like, hey, we're paying more money, but the animation quality is getting worse. Tee Lopes is basic, and if he continues to peddle these bubble-bound philosophies of how he thinks the world should play along with him, he's just handing the rest of us further outlines for more content that will use him as an example, as a deterrent for people to follow in his footsteps. Part of why I'm so willing and unapologetically able to say this today is because I'm not making this up out of nowhere. You look at any of Tee Lopes' tantrums, and you will find my opinion and response well represented by other bystanders. Toad Roasted says, why is it suddenly bad to be critical of something? T, it's not. You are the problem. Assuming this is in relation to the Superstars video, yeah, it's awesome we're getting something in the first place, and some of the discourse will turn annoying and toxic, but Ramona cares about animation and dissects it and criticizes it because it matters to Ramona. Furthermore, yeah, T, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on this one. Criticism opens the doors and allows things to improve. Just look at Frontiers. Without criticism, there wouldn't be any updates that fixed a lot of issues that people had with the game. Dude, and it happened again with Pokemon Sword and Shield. King K somehow tries to chase everyone away from constructive criticism, but if they don't voice their criticisms about why they think they're getting shortchanged as far as what they were promised in Pokemon Sword and Shield, a lack of backlash sends a clear signal to Nintendo like, yep, keep on coasting on autopilot, keep cutting corners. Spidey here is saying things that have well been already established in the community, and it's falling on T's deaf ears. Daedalus Medio says, I can understand it's frustrating as an artist, but criticism is valid as long as it's constructive and helpful. And yeah, maybe some of the messages that were criticizing the Superstars animation were childish, right? But that's the internet. Are you now, T, going to rant to your entire audience for the sins of a couple of bad 12-year-olds? People are allowed to analyze and critique something that is released from a big multi-million-dollar company. Of course, some people take it too far, and it's all just opinions at the end of the day. Absolutely, T, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company. Where are you getting this? You make it seem like someone is going around to elementary school talent shows and giving a brutal critique of a tap dancing routine. Like, that would not be appropriate or constructive. You make it seem like this is a Boy Scout showcase of original art. Yeah, maybe you should filter when it comes to that, but it being sold for a price on the marketplace, it begins and ends there. There's nothing else to say. Why is this situation the first time we've seen T deliver this, right? Why now? If this is such a pressing issue that needs to be said, why is it suddenly an issue when the Sonic Superstars animation debuted? Well, there's a surprise twist. Tee Lopes contributed to the music of that Superstars intro animation. So really, this entire rant of his, it's just because Tee Lopes would have preferred that people were praising the music. Tee Lopes betrays his insecurities as a person who is constantly, he has such an ego that needs to be fed that he really is always looking for people to notice and praise his music. So this really just seems here to be the case of, you should be focusing on my great music. All of a sudden, this becomes something for Mr. Lopes to soapbox about, but it's really just his selfish motive. Do you really care about protecting the animators? Or is this really just an opportunity cost that, no, people should be really praising and congratulating you on your music? That's a selfish motive, Mr. Lopes. And I wish it was the only example of this kind of thing. You jump ahead to Penny's break, and you get this totally unforced, just bridge burner. I don't know if Tee Lopes is going out of his way, trying to get Evening Star blacklisted from getting any future reviews at GameStop. But the week that Penny's big break came out, what does Tee Lopes spend his time ruminating about? Well, he's got this tweet in response to GameSpot's review, which reads as follows. I just read GameSpot's Penny's Big Breakaway review article, and there isn't a single word about the audio, good or bad. Like, it isn't worth mentioning. Maybe the reviewer Sporky Eve played it on mute. Top it off with a picture, passive-aggressive. What's the deal? What was he thinking? Tee Lopes, if you're upset that the multimedia product that was purchased or review coded and reviewed, right, he would have liked, again, attention, who wants to feel seen. He's so insecure that he's, right, looking forward to the release of Penny, not to deliver a gaming experience for the community, but to add some more praise to his portfolio and resume. There are so many different ways that this could have been handled without going nuclear like this and thereby jeopardizing Evening Star's standing in the review community. Maybe you could have sent this reviewer a private message. I don't know if it will go too far to ask him to just add in another paragraph, right? Show some humility, be humble, say that, you worked hard in the game, you're curious to see what he thinks. You could even ask some fans to just do a fun little side quest. Ask some fans to maybe tweet at GameSpot and say, like, hey, there's so many, less confrontational ways that you can do it, but all of a sudden, no. The composer himself is taken to the global stage to just dunk on this guy and shame him. Shame him and do an AVGN scratcher. What was he thinking? This is really only stemming from Tee's entitlement. It could be very well as simple as the reviewer didn't like the music, thought that it was too random and scatterbrained, and it's just a constant barrage of notes here, there, and everywhere, desperately trying to hold the listener's attention as if this is another installment in Super Mario Wonder TikTok philosophy. Maybe the reviewer didn't like the music, couldn't bring himself to give a phony, half-hearted acknowledgement of it, and decided to leave you off the hook. But that's just a theory, a plausible possibility that you should factor into things. You are not entitled to have every review mention and or praise the sounds that you made. If it had ended there, I would have left it alone. But shit is still happening, you guys. As recently as just this past fiscal quarter. Post-Penny. Post-Metal Slug Tactics the Hedgehog. At this point, let's not exhaustively read off all this noise. Tee Lopes objected to this Twitter account, which very simply shares bad takes encountered in the community. So even aside from the authentic entertainment value, this also promotes critical thinking and encourages meaningful discussion. How to identify and debunk nonsense takes. So it is very much not promoting a harassment campaign. So since Tee is in this instance severely abusing the word hate in his accusation of this Twitter account as perpetuating hate, so Tee now needs to recognize what an unacceptable threat this is toward basic free speech and constructive dialogue. If he does not take back the stand that he took here, then he should get ready for a video titled, Why Speed Jungle's Composition is Objectively Bad. That's a video that never needs to be made. It will be if no one else in Tee's life can get him to understand that his opinion on the nature of this account is irrelevant, and he has no shame-based veto card that he can play to silence these honest discussions. Cool, says X. That's your opinion, Tee. It doesn't give you the leeway to misconstrue someone's statement when they're getting bombarded with hate. Say you want to speaking as a human being, then think of this. How would you feel if someone as big as you abruptly weighs in and puts words in your mouth? And now all the shit piling is doubled because, again, you were just naively posting someone else's shit take on your account. Here comes in the friend. Ready? Shit.
the friend you're defending himself even said this account is a cool idea to encourage discussion. Come on, man. Stop digging this hole for yourself. It's embarrassing. So this take is already represented. And Tee is so caught in his own ego bubble that he tries to justify it by saying, I'm defending my friend, but the friend is cool with it. The friend seems to understand the benefits of an account like this, to start a conversation, to weigh in. If Tee Lopes is spreading hate, which he basically admitted it was a hateful take, enough that he would take it down, then this Sonic Confessions and Takes account is serving a public benefit for the community, saying, let's look at some stuff that continues to happen, let's establish where we stand on it. Tee Lopes can't handle it. He just wants a permanent moratorium on any constructive criticism. Don't take my word for it. Take Eisenberger's word for it. Not gonna lie, the name is X cooked you, Mr. Lopes. Just about everything I'm saying today, guys, is nothing new. What I am showing you is that identifying the very unfortunate immature pitfalls with which Tee Lopes conducts himself in the Sonic community, people have been saying this on Twitter all along. And so this just becomes, something for Tee Lopes followers to consider moving forward, is that many of you very clearly do fully recognize you're not getting seduced by Tee's music in a way that's making you look past all these poisonous aspects of how he conducts himself and even raises his own children. If you are going to watch Tee continue doing this, not change course at all, right? Why bother? Is it a lost cause? I'm not going to waste breath on Twitter, right, trying to talk reason to him, and I admire these people for weighing in, but I'm not going to waste my breath if I'm just going to see him get worse and worse with every passing year. If these were early career stumbles, if he was able to mature and grow up, then I could look past it. But it's only getting worse. It's only gotten worse. So that brought us to the Sonic Mania video, and I'm like, okay, checkpoint. When I look at, we need to talk about how you talk about hydrosity back in 2022, and now it's finally time to make a Sonic Mania video. Where is Tee at? Ooh, he's only doubled down. So since he's a triple lost cause and has made no secret about it, it's time for a permanent roast. It's time for a permanent roast to put him on blast as a deterrent for the millions of impressionable fans who are watching along in the audience. All right, so we are almost arriving at the sentencing for Tee Lopes apologists. But before we do, we have one final case study to touch upon. I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to ask you, am I applying a double standard here? I'm genuinely asking, do you think what I am saying here poses a double standard problem or not? The event that happened when Tee Lopes posted a cover of Can You Feel the Sunshine? It is shining all around. Remember that? So when Tee Lopes posted his cover of Can You Feel the Sunshine, the composer tweeted this. It's such a shame that Tee Lopes did such a bad job and a bad arrangement, whilst failing to credit the songwriter and singer and vocal arranger for his own personal social media likes. Absolutely shameful. Using other people's creativity for your own personal gain is disgraceful. When this was first brought to my attention, you bet that my initial impression was, wow, this is not a good look. There are so many better ways of dealing with this without making a big public scene. Richard Jacques is perfectly understandable within his rights and reasonable to be upset that he wasn't credited, but my first question would just be like, well, why wouldn't you just send a private message to Tee or Sega or whoever to just very simply request that the composer credit be added? And Richard Jacques did take this tweet down pretty soon afterward, and they did add the composer credit, certainly on the YouTube posting, to say nothing of the Twitter side of things, I don't know. But you can see that video has a near 500,000 views, and it credits Richard Jacques, as it should have all along. However, although that is my first impression, but for Richard Jacques to put specifically Tee Lopes on blast like this, what I would say is that unlike Tee's disparaging aggression toward like superstars, animation critiquers, the reason why this is different is because Richard Jacques may have his reasons. Tee Lopes is a very specific person who has operated with Sega on official projects and stuff. I don't know anything behind the scenes. Maybe this composer credit snub was kind of the last straw. I don't know how much personal history is there. It's possible that, maybe the bridge was already burned. Knowing how bogus Tee conducts himself, it's easy to imagine that he would piss Richard Jacques off, maybe there was already ceased communications and this was the last straw. I don't know. I can give Richard Jacques benefit of the doubt where I can't for Tee Lopes' incident, because with Tee Lopes, there is no basis for him to tell people not to criticize the Superstars animation. He has no standing to do that. He also has zero standing to tell the Sonic Takes account to take down their tweets. His opinion is that it's bad. Well, the world doesn't run on Lopes' opinions. Richard Jacques may have had his reason. As a music fan, as someone that is deeply devoted to the craft of composition and the artistic expression that involves, as I thought about this, guys, having done the recent Sonic Mania video, I had this mind-blowing connect the dots moment. Long before I gave up on Mr. Lopes' Twitter account, I remember ad nauseum. T would time and again post memes about trumpets, about how trumpets are his thing. You know, simple, low-stakes tweets to say, like, wake up in the morning and make a song. What does this need? Trumpets. You know, it's an ongoing bit that he spams trumpets. You listen to Sonic Mania, it's trumpets, the soundtrack. Now, me, as Alex Yard, someone who's devoted his life to music theory and primarily Sonic video games for the past 4 or 5 years, even I did not know that the trumpet identity of Sonic Mania, right, is like directly taking that exact vibe. From Hataya's Quartz Quadrant, sure, but Richard Jacques did Tee Lopes when Tee Lopes was still in diapers. You listen to that special stage song, and it's a revelation. Oh, okay, this was part of the incubator where Sonic Mania was born. So for as long as I followed Tee Lopes on Twitter, and as many times as I saw him lean into the I love trumpets, this needs more trumpets memes and stuff, not once would he mention Richard Jacques' contribution to the art of trumpets in Sonic. I look back and I said, well, here's yet another example of T appropriating Richard Jacques' contributions without the very basic aspect of giving him the nod, and then to not include a composer credit. Do you want to take Richard Jacques' wardrobe too? Guys, there is benefit of the doubt here, right? And I've heard that Richard Jacques has been kind of cutthroat and hostile to Bentley Jones. But you guys got to understand, when you hear someone say something nasty or confrontational, it's not like these nasty confrontational things are never allowed. There's a time and a place. And if I look at the entire Sonic community, if I'm to think of people who really need to be put in their place because their ego is way out of control and they think the world runs on their opinions, Bentley Jones and Tee Lopes are right at the top of the people who need to be taught a lesson, who are ignoring the lessons that their Twitter followers are handing to them over the years, right? I think of Richard Jacques being hostile to both of these people. I don't know for sure that that's what's happening behind the scenes, but benefit of the doubt, that's it. There is no benefit of the doubt that would explain any of T's tantrums, leaning on the cop-out of, oh, I'm not speaking as a professional right now. I'm talking as a human, right? You let the excuse factory churn out more additions. There's literally no behind-the-scenes thing that could ever excuse those incidents by T. I could see the lack of composer credit as a final straw for Mr. Jacques. I'm definitely not telling you that Richard Jacques definitely did the right thing, but it's not the same as Tee Lopes. All right, guys, so that's going to bring us to our third and final portion of today's video. I will now be delivering Tee Lopes apologists their sentencing, which will specify what they need to do in order to atone for this situation. I said what I said in the comments section of the Mania Music Theory video. I did it to highlight a double standard. So the sentence that will now be put in the ball of the court, if you've heard everything that I have to say and you think the two things are different, it's not even really a sentencing. I'm just asking you to weigh in. Do you think Tee Lopes' actions, as summarized today, are okay in a way that my comment on the video is not? So it's not even really a sentencing. I'm really just asking you. I've put all the cards on the table. If there are some of you out there that are still, Tee Lopes good, Alex Yard bad, I've said my piece. You've known where the door is all along, and it's only one donut per person on the way out. Don't try to swipe a second one. We're going to see that. Now that you've seen all the things that Tee Lopes has done, his examples of bullying people who aren't like him, his counterproductive aggressive defiance of constructive criticism, and his underdeveloped conflict resolution methods that are setting a dog crap example for his legions of millions of fans and admirers. I'm ready to hear from you. Do you understand why there's a double standard now? That anything you're getting mad at me for doing is just something that Tee Lopes has been doing in plain sight all along, doing these big bridge-burning fiery tantrums, making a scene in front of everyone. I'm discouraged that you all continue legitimizing him in this way, and this video discussion today has really just served to, once and for all, definitively clear Tee Lopes and his apologists out of my GI system, once and for all. I have no plan. I put the satire in the Mania music theory video. Tee Lopes saw the cover of the Ice Cap Fervor Records Hard Times reissues. He had to give me a positivity report card, unnecessarily summoning up memories of constructive criticism I've delivered his way in the past because he thinks that's negative. He doesn't want to see that negativity. I approve of what you did today, Alex. Here's to more of that in the future. No. You misunderstand that you were just read the Riot Act. You are not now going to give me a positivity report card that is misaligned and skewed because of your own pervasive and self-serving toxic positivity. In case anyone doesn't know, my channel is primarily devoted to debunking fallacies in video games, music theories, and beyond. I eat internet radio broadcasts for breakfast. This has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone, terrestrial internet radio, baby. So thanks for all the kind words on the Sonic Mania video. I'm thrilled with how it turned out, and I would not have lampooned Mr. Lopes in such a permanent way if I thought he had the slightest chance of redemption, maturity, and constructive communication. That can only come from him. And we, as the public, can put pressure on him, as many people on Twitter have already tried to do, and since it's fallen on deaf ears, if today's further discussion falls on deaf ears, then all that really means is that there will be further reason down the line to speak about the persisting problem. Make sure that it does not get normalized. I would not have any reason to talk about Mr. Lopes' post-Hydro City t-shirts if that wasn't just a simple warm-up. And the idea that I could take to the stage, talk about my thought process to an audience of hundreds, it's a passive byproduct of delivering a perspective that matters. Good night, everybody. I'll see you in Orlando.